Hello. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, Sean. How are you doing? I'm great.
Yeah, very good. How are things over there in California?
It's good. It's finally cooling off. It was crazy hot this week. So it's nice to cool off a little bit.
We're on the opposite end here in the winter in Melbourne, so suffering through the cold. So a little bit jealous of where you guys are over there.
Oh, don't be.
That's No, thank you so much for giving me time today to just have a chat with you. Been looking forward to doing this for quite a while, so I'm glad to get into your schedule. I know you've
Oh,
been
it's my
quite busy
pleasure.
over there, with book fairs and everything else.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I guess just wanted to spend some time to you, getting to know you today. I think a lot of people that are listening to this would be really interested in some of the unusual journey you've gone through in terms of being an entrepreneur and starting up a bookshop, and especially at a time when things were looking pretty bleak, I think, in the world.
Yeah.
So I think going back to understanding where you came from maybe is a great place to start. And I think along the way you have lots of valuable nuggets that you could share with people that are thinking about this journey to become an entrepreneur.
Oh, why, thank you. I hope so. I hope it's helpful to
So
somebody
yeah,
out
so
there.
I know things were really challenging, a few years back. You, like people might not know, you were a flight attendant, and
Yes.
those things are great positions, fun, absolutely wonderful roles that people that keep us safe when we're in the air. And unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, not a lot of planes are flying. So, tell us like what kind of happened, kind of going back a few years now, but which seems like it's just like a nightmare or a dream in the past. But
Like a collective fever dream. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah,
actually
what
happened.
happened? So, how did you end up going from flight attendant to bookshop owner?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because I started flying with the intention of being an entrepreneur at some point. Like that was just it's just is in my DNA. I come from a long line of folks that kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit, that drive to start a business, to kind of take control of your own future in that way. And but I mean, because of the circumstances, like the country, the where I live, I need health insurance, I need a retirement plan, and all of those things are really hard to come by as an entrepreneur if that's like your sole focus. So I actually started flying with the intention of at some point like doing a side hustle, like starting a business. And the dream was always a community oriented alternative retail space. With like a nonprofit leaning kind of intention, mission statement. We It's so funny because in 2020 so many people, everybody picked up new hobbies, like whether it was gardening or sourdough, everyone was
Lots of
making
people
banana.
cooking. That's right.
Yes. Yes. And I remember, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the last recession, and remember I before I was a flight attendant, I was in finance. I worked at Bank of America. And I remember the fear, 2008, the housing market crash, and the financial crisis that followed. But I remember being in that industry, in an industry where there was that fear, that uncertainty of what was going to happen. And I remember it was very easy to be paralyzed by that fear. Um, and I remember thinking back then there were things that I wanted to do, but I didn't do out of fear because it was like, well, is that going to be a good investment? Is that going to be the right way to to spend my time? And back then it was early 20s for me, which probably would have been the best time. That's the best time to waste if you're going to
So you
waste
could
any
take
time.
all the risk, right? Back
Yeah,
then.
like what you
Yeah.
lose when you're 20
Like health
something.
insurance, what do I need that for?
I
I'm 20.
know, but
Yeah.
I didn't. I just went into another kind of stable, completely different industry. One that was more allowed for like a more kind of free flowing, different kind of lifestyle. That offered health insurance and free flights. I was like, that could work for
Travel
me.
benefits. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. But all that is to say, like when the pandemic happened, and I remember kind of feeling that same fear of like uncertainty of like what was going to happen, but also at the same time looking around me and seeing how there was all the commercial space that was available, everybody moved out of all of their spaces. Unfortunately, like businesses were failing. Everywhere you drove around town was all for lease signs, and everybody was quarantining. Um, and I remember thinking like I could take my free time that I have now at night after the kids go to bed, because I have two small children now. They're in elementary school now, but that kind of quiet panic time and try and build something for the future. So I
Yeah.
revisited my plan from like a decade ago, and the original plan, like plan A, to be an entrepreneur, and just refocused and really honed in my the strategy, and just overhauled the business plan for like the modern age. And it was funny because it was a time when the buzzword was like pivoting. Everyone's pivoting. All these existing businesses were pivoting. And I remember just thinking like, I don't have to pivot because I've never done it before. So everything's a pivot. So like everything is scary. So nothing is scary, and if we could survive this, if we could start and make it happen now, if I could get into one of those empty buildings with an understanding that I will commit to being there thick and thin, like with like hopefully a landlord would take a chance on me and my crazy idea, and kind of just wound up in the perfect circumstance where in my community, where a building that I've always loved was vacant for the first time in like 100 years. Yeah, there had only ever been two other businesses in it, but it had been empty for months, and nobody was thinking about starting anything. But at the same time, like in the back of my mind, I had that memory of what happened last time, not wanting to be paralyzed with fear. But I remember thinking like the people that took action in those moments were the people that like progressed.
Because a lot of people back then were frankly locked down and hibernating, and they weren't doing anything. People were watching Netflix nonstop, or
Which was
just
very
reading
appropriate.
books, or baking I was gonna, they were, make baking or whatever. But you decided to do something completely different. So, what is it
Yeah.
about you what do you think that made you want to do that versus just stand back and say, let's wait and see? You decided, hey, I've got this thing that's been in my mind for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean,
why would you do that? It's such a high risk type of
and I'm not
time.
even sure that it was like that different from what everyone else was doing. It was just kind of like my spin on it. Everybody was doing things that made them happy, and for me it was like actually taking action on a business plan that I had kind of come up with. Everyone was kind of, and I adapted it so that we, when we opened the bookstore, there was or when we did curbside pickup, like we took, I don't know if you remember, but like, or if it was like this in Australia, but everybody was kind of like nesting, everyone was kind of like, oh, this is my house. I'm like, let me
We
redesign
we
it.
were in Melbourne, so we were locked down big time. I
Yeah,
think we're the
everybody
most
was
locked
locked.
down city. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
nothing.
and
Yeah.
it was the same thing here, but everybody was like purging stuff, and a lot of that stuff was books. And so what we did was, at the time, instead of we posted requesting that instead of throwing them away, you just leave your boxes of books and bookshelves, whatever, out on your driveway, and we would collect them. So we picked them up in a truck. Like I remember being like double mask glove, like the whole shebang, putting them in the back of the truck, and then leaving them outside, because that was like the
You could get
appropriate
too
thing.
close to people anyway. Yeah.
No, and people would just like leave them on their driveway and send me a text and be like, they're out there, and I would come throw them in the back of my truck, and then put them all like in my backyard or my garage. Well, actually, it was outside, because the thinking at the time was to leave things in the sun for like a day, or I think it was 24, 48
To
hours.
disinfect everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had left all the books outside, and thankfully we live in sunny Southern California, and it wasn't rainy, because that would have really kind of like ruined everything. But
Good luck there.
yeah. And so that was our starting inventory for the store. And it took a long time, because there was the time frame that we had to like leave them to like sanitize, and then we were sanitizing everything. And it was like a very different production, but everybody was we were doing kind of a service, removing things from being put in a landfill, sanitizing them, putting them into our bookstore. And then we arranged for curbside pickup, and we were doing like all special orders, and everything was like no contact. And then we were allowed to like have a certain number of people in the store. We have a pretty big store, so we allowed, I think at first it was like 6 people at a time, which if you saw how big the store is, that was kind of like, it really was, you'd have basically private private shopping. But it was
But at the
mostly,
time, so I was going to say at the time though, you're in a location that was basically underdeveloped or things were closing, and you decided that this is the spot for you that no one else was finding valuable. So what did you see as different? Like, why did
well,
you
I mean,
think most people probably thought, okay, this street is not looking like anything's happening here. There's lots of for lease signs, and you decide, hey, that's the best place to go. So why did that happen?
it's my neighborhood, it's my community, and we live in a book desert. There are very few books per household on average here. You can look it up online to see if you live in a book desert. And we just live in one of those regions where there's less accessibility to books, and because we live within the county of Orange, and
Mm.
there's like six independent book now there's like six independent bookstores. Back when we were planning, there was maybe four, maybe five, and it's just, I mean, an independent bookstore is really the, I believe, like the beating heart of a community, of a neighborhood. Whenever I traveled back in the day, like you walk into a bookstore and you can kind of really see what a neighborhood is about, based on what the people there are reading, what they're choosing to read,
Mm.
what's available in their bookstore. And we needed that, like the building itself. And hopefully one day you can make it out and check it out. It's in an old town neighborhood, so there's lots of foot traffic, and people live here. It's a very, like a quintessential small town. It's everything you need is kind of within walking distance. So there's a lot of foot traffic, but there was no bookstore. And it was funny because when we opened, people were like, "Oh, this is great that this is a bookstore again," because it just has that energy of being a bookstore. But it
But it
was
was
never
never a bookstore.
it was never a bookstore. And still to this, people like argue with me about it. I'm like, actually, and they're like, no, 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 this has always been a bookstore. It was a hardware store. It was a consignment. It was an antique store. Like, we're the third business in the last 120 years that's been in this building. But yeah, no, it was just something that was necessary. It was something that we needed. And bookstores are unique in that they are functionally third places. It's a place where people can gather. Yes, it's a retail space. We survive because people buy books from us. There's no obligation to buy a book when you come in. It's not a place of work, and there's no alcohol being served. It's not a bar. It's not like we have a coffee shop. So you can hang out and grab a cup of coffee, but it's kind of a unique atmosphere.
Community vibe where you're, having people like I guess, you're very different than the franchisee model or the kind of big tech bookshops that are online. You've taken something that's almost like the quintessential old small town, vibe bookshop, and opened it up to the community, which I think a lot of people probably have that dream and have the passion for books and all of that, but they, as we know, lots of entrepreneurs fail. So do you think having that finance background and working in that industry helped you in what you're doing now? Because there's a lot of bookshops that would watch this and they might say, "Oh yeah, I want to do exactly that." But like, what are the things you need to be aware of? Then, because people have lots of passion when they're starting businesses, but that doesn't necessarily mean success.
Yeah, no, and I would argue that passion is obviously like the most important thing. Actually, no, one of the most important things. The other most important thing would be the discipline involved in building a business. Is you come up with your plan, and there is such a there. It's such a small margin. Like the margins we're dealing with in retail books are so much smaller than a normal retail business, that it's never going to be a business anybody gets into to get rich. You have to have a different motivation for doing this for diving into this specific industry. But at the same time, like you can't just do it based on the passion of the love of the books, which is hard because a lot of times those two things kind of butt heads, because like I just want everybody to have books. So I'm like, yeah, just take the books. But it's like, no, we have to run a business.
You have to
I
pay the
got to pay
rent.
rent.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
gotta pay my rent. So there has to be that underlying financial stability. And it's challenging. I know the statistics, like most small businesses fail in the first 5 years, and we're just about to hit that 5 year mark. And we're growing, which is great. It's terrifying sometimes, like, when when you grow, and when you grow faster than, the original plan had stipulated. And for us, it's a little tricky because I had a plan, adjusted the plan for the pandemic, and things are going well. We live in an age of um, big box stores, of huge online competitors. And my motto has always been that I don't compete with them. We are not operating the same business. And I think that's really kind of like our key to success, or what have you, or hopefully longevity. I don't compete with them. I don't compete on price because I can't, like
Right. They're,
they're
yeah.
setting the rules and I can't, I can't sell
I think
something.
that's a great point, right? You've instead of playing by their rules, you've decided I'm changing the game. I'm going to
Yeah,
make
playing
my own game,
I'm totally playing a
right?
different game. Like,
You've made up, yeah. And I think you're, from what I understand from the bookshop, is that you're selling experience more than you're selling books. If
right.
that's a proper assumption there, I think
Yeah,
things
it's
like the book fairs, the events, things that people are probably longing to connect to each other, and
right.
ultimately that's the service you're offering, right? Is the
Right.
connection.
Right. And I mean, it's the community. It's having that space, having that the neutral territory to come in and have a discussion without the pressure to buy anything. The place to kind of really get to know your neighbors, your neighborhood. Bookstores are important for so many different things. Like there's so many like advocates that that come through and feel supported by independent bookstores. Just they're very necessary spaces. They're advocates of free speech, of equal rights. Of they're just safe places for a lot of people. And I mean, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen because it still happens, especially people that have never been here before. They'll come in and kind of see what we have and then be like, oh, I'm going to get it on Amazon. It's cheaper. And I'm like, every time it's stab in the heart, but I'm like, I get it, it's cheaper, but then the longer they spend, the more time they come back, the more they realize like how detrimental that is, and the importance of having a space like ours. And it becomes less about saving the $2, and more about supporting your the local ecosystem, recognizing where those dollars are going, being intentional with the money that's being spent, being aware like, okay, it might be $1 or $2 more expensive here, but like, can I go sit in a warehouse and drink a latte and get a new book recommendation? Can I, go sit in a big box store that doesn't even have tables. Actually, we used to have a big box competitor up the street from us, and they closed. Like they went out of business, kind of did like a
In that
restructure,
area, right?
but then they reopened a new, like a kind of a flagship model that's supposed to be modeled more on independent bookstores right up the street, like really close. And I was like, great, how's this gonna work? And I was genuinely concerned. Like I was like, okay, they're gonna put us out of business. But then what they
And
did was they
this is into what, year 4 or year 3 of your
last year, year
last year?
three.
So
Yeah. So
okay, year 3.
yeah, I was like year three. And it really freaked me out. Like it really freaked me out. But when they reopen, they're huge, way bigger than us, have a much bigger selection, but they have no tables, they have no bath, like it's a, they just want you to come in, buy the book and leave, which is kind of the antithesis of what we're about. We're like, please come hang out. Let's talk about it. Start a book club, join a book club.
Mm.
Make some new friends that love things that you love, find your people.
And I understand, like you've got the support of the community behind you. You've invested in the community. You've said, I'm going to go into a space that nobody pretty wants, in that street where it was really quiet, and you've built up something that is an experience for people, almost like, not exactly the same because it's more of a franchise, big business thing, but like Starbucks talks about the third place, right? It's not home, it's not work, it's this other place you go to connect with people. And I think you probably add something like that, where people can't get that if they're just going online to buy books.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, things have grown out of this place. It's so funny because when I first draft of that business plan, it's like it's ideas, it's your ideas, it's your dreams, it's on paper, and then you try and put like your projections for financials and like market research. You throw all of that in there, and it's all just like conceptual, and then it starts to happen. And for me and for Arvida, it kind of, it's like, I mean, I'm pregnant, so maybe I'm just emotional thinking this way, but like I feel like having a business is kind of like, or making a business plan is like when you have a baby, and you're like, okay, I think, okay, I have brown hair, maybe my baby's gonna have brown hair, and you kind of think about all these things, and you plan for the future, and you're like, okay, they're gonna go to school and blah blah blah, and but then they're born and they're like their own people, and it's like the business is kind of, it has a life of its own, it has its own ecosystem, it has all these incredible things that have grown out of it. We have like, we started a community garden. It was like the first one in Tustin. We've donated hundreds of pounds of food from the community garden to a local food bank, to help with or the unhoused or the housing unstable in our community. And there's like this direct impact that has come out of this that has benefited so many in so many different ways. Never mind that we pay local taxes and that we support local authors and local talent, local artists. But we also, like, we threw the first Orange County Book Fair 2 weeks ago and had 7,000 people. Like, we closed down the streets, with the help of the city and other like 14 other independent bookstores all came down from all over Southern California and kind of rallied in our little city of Tustin and just like had this crazy little magical day that all the restaurants were busy, everything was busy, and it was all kind of because of something that grew out of this space, and that's just like a couple of the things that have kind of grown out of here. We're working on like a theater project into reviving our dinner theater that's up the street that's been kind of defunct for the last like 15 years, but we're about to take on that project. We're starting up, we just started a literary journal that just got printed for the first time, the Arvida Review. We're actually about to jump into what we're calling the Tustin Good News. It's like a local nonprofit based newspaper, and that'll be launching before the year's end. It's
So
gonna
you've
be
got
like
lots of priorities going on. How do you juggle the priorities? Like, how do you know which investments or where do you spend your time? Because I'm sure you've got a
well,
family. I understand you're working with your husband as well, so like that's also probably got its own
yeah. No, I mean it is. It's like
challenges or
it's
benefits.
yeah. I mean it's the bookstore is kind of like it's our life, But none of it would be possible without like the support of our community on a greater scale, like the people that come in and buy books from me, but also from my like immediate community of like my husband and our daughters even are like, they're young, but they get it, like they get how important it is. And if you were here a couple hours ago, you would have seen, right alongside our staff, like my mother-in-law and Mike's aunt, my husband's aunt, like helping shelve and organize books and donations that we get. And it really is, it's so important to have support, and it's the balance is hard, the juggling everything, because you kind of get to a point where, at least for me, like in the last few years, where people see like, oh, you can get some stuff done, like let's give you more ideas and like give you more opportunities to get things done. And so, prioritizing for me, it's like what projects I'm most passionate about, things that I think will have the greatest impact, in the way that I want to be able to say that I can help, and having the right people support you on those projects, like coordinating the Orange County Book Fair, which was like it was a huge event. Like there were a lot of moving parts, but we had like a really great team. Like my board of directors on that was like 8 incredible human beings that were all equally passionate and driven, and there's something to be said about like surrounding yourself with like the team that, will get stuff done, that really cares and is really driven and is really disciplined. And I've been really lucky to do that. Same thing with like the board for the community garden, like that board of directors is another 8 individuals that are all really passionate and driven, that really, they're all volunteer positions. And the people that care enough to, like, we had a board meeting on Saturday at 7 a.m., like to get up at 7 a.m., 6:30,
Volunteer. Yeah.
and to like willingly, show up at a board meeting at 7 a.m. on Saturday just out of love. Like it's really inspiring. So just, I mean, surrounding yourself with people um, that are inspired and that inspire you, like, I think is super important and kind of helps deliver. And like this new project with the newspaper that's getting going, the people that are involved in that project are all just equally driven, talented people, that are, I'm really looking forward to see but.
So you've obviously got lots of ideas. It sounds like you're involved in the garden. You've got book fair, things going on. Like there's a lot of moving parts, and there's probably people watching this that say, well, I'm not a bookshop. I'm not in that industry. So what's the value of some of the messages that you could share to entrepreneurs that is kind of cross industry? That doesn't matter what you're in, but these things are similar challenges that any business owner, whether they're starting out in the beginning or maybe they're 5 years into it like you are.
Yeah. I mean, and this is something that comes up a lot, because there are so many projects, and as many as that I'm involved in, there are as many that I've said no to. It's about being able to find that crossover between the things that kind of like refill your emotional tank. So like because the opening a bookstore came from 100% just passion, like out the gate, it at a crazy time, you had to have that love for it to get going. And like we were talking about earlier, the discipline will take you over a certain number of bumps, but then you still have to like maintain that passion for like why what you're doing is important, why, where that motivation comes from. Like you need to recharge that sometimes. And so for me, like that's where the other projects are important, but they're all still like in line with the mission of the bookstore, and building community, promoting literacy, and they all roads lead back to Arvida, keeping those side projects they will ultimately like support the business, drive business back. You can consider it marketing, you can consider it just brand awareness or what have you, but you need to do the things that will like recharge you as well, and like
A coach talk about it and saying it's basically energy management, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit
Yeah.
of time management and energy management where you just, you do the things that will keep you can work 16 hours and you just don't even think about it, right? Because you're doing something
You want to.
is benefit. Yeah, you want to do it. So it doesn't become a chore. It becomes more of a, you're putting good energy out there, and that's something that's going to come back later on. Maybe not immediately, like immediate dollars in the bank, but that this energy is going to lead to something.
Yeah.
Later.
Very much so, very much so. And I mean, like even sometimes like planning that book fair was like a huge time consuming, like energy intense activity, even doing it with the incredible people that I did it with. And there were moments where I was like, well, this is a huge project. Like I really hope that it works out. And it did, it ultimately did. And we're going to do it again. And I know it's going to grow and just be better and better. But you have to find those things that will kind of recharge your batteries and help you grow in a different way. Like you can't, uh, it's always good to kind of think outside of the box. Or at least I believe it is. I don't think that you can survive as an entrepreneur with being entirely like single-minded, because you hit a saturation point, you hit a plateau, which is something that we found. There's only X amount of foot traffic, like you can saturate your foot traffic. You can, hit the targets that you want for like transactions, volume wise and like average dollar wise, you can hit all those targets, but then you hit that kind of saturation point. You have to like kind of expand. You have to change the way that you're thinking that. So if you're always kind of doing that in small ways, in other ways,
you have to pivot, as they say.
The pivot, and being born in a pandemic, you're born pivoting. We're taking on new contracts now, like we're doing like event center book sales, things we do a lot of offsite stuff, and year over year we've grown. Like even right now in an economic downturn in an industry that's like dying, our sales are up 25% from last year,
wow,
which is
impressive. Yeah,
is pretty significant. And I mean, I don't mean that to brag or anything, because it's really just it's because of all of the side projects, I think, and because I think people realize we're not it's
You're
easier
not
for people to
just
justify paying $2 more for a book than Amazon, like when they realize like all the effort that like we're doing. Meanwhile, they don't know that like all of that stuff is just stuff that I love and that recharges my soul. But it grants us more opportunities like on a bigger scale outside of our neighborhood, even though I'm very like
yeah.
community and neighborhood focused.
So speaking of like the elephant in the room, which is obviously Amazon, everybody knows that there's books on Amazon. And it's very convenient to get them delivered same day, and there's all those kind of benefits, but very
Yeah.
different than the benefits you're selling. So like with this, obviously I have a lot of interest in tech. Having worked in software for many years, and I would say I'm more digitally minded, and that's why I wanted to talk to you because I'm talking to somebody I would say is probably more analog minded. So
Yeah.
I think it's quite maybe that's a good headline for this, the digital versus analog, who knows? But
It's true.
I think,
It's true.
how do you see you surviving, not surviving, I say surviving and thriving in what's becoming more and more like a digital ecosystem of, everything's becoming digital. There's AI coming out now that's like, helping people to, craft and edit and, develop content, whether it's in, businesses that are doing marketing. Do you use AI in any of your analog world of the bookshop?
Yeah, you know what's so funny is like in this world, like in this industry, publishing, writing, whatnot, there is very much disdain for AI. I mean, I feel like I am not necessarily in that camp. Like, I feel like it is an incredible tool to be leveraged, and I think that I'm really looking forward to all of the possibilities that are kind of brought to us because of AI, and I think that it also I mean, ironically, like it makes people crave face-to-face interaction also because you're never really sure if is that chatbot like an AI chatbot or is that a human? Like who am I talking to? But like when you call me or when you come in the store and you see my face or my husband's face, there's
It's
just
real.
it's that grounding that happens, which kind of helps separate us from the website that shall not be named. Um, but it's just such a different, like I said earlier, we're not playing by their rules. Like we operate in a very different way, and I'm really proud of that. It's kind of wild how things have changed so fast, and there was this big like when I wanted to open the bookstore in 2020, I mean, everybody said it was crazy. Like everybody was like, that's a horrible idea. Like genuinely, like nobody was shy
Like,
about telling me
don't
what
open a bookshop now. That's crazy. What
what
are
are
you
you
thinking?
like in
Like,
real
yeah,
life too? Like not even a website, like in
yes.
physical bookstore, like selling actual books, not even ebooks or audiobooks. And it's funny because everybody thought like that e-readers were going to take over, right? Like when they first came out, when the Nook and the Kindle and like the e-paper was invented. And I mean, I had the first Kindle. I totally did back in 2007 or whatever it was. And the the funny thing about it was it grew and then it hit the saturation point because it hit all of the people that were into like gadgets, and then everyone realized like, oh wait, no, we still like books. It's like different.
We
So when
like
you have a
paper
book,
still. Yeah.
yeah, I like paper. I can highlight. I can dog ear. I can give it to my friend when I'm done with it. Like I can hand it to them, which I think is like the biggest part is like that human connection of like sharing it with another person when you're done with it. Um, and so the e-reader like and like Kindle book sales kind of plateaued. And the thing that I think caught people off guard now is audiobooks. Like everyone's going crazy for audiobooks. And I mean, we're into it. Like I listen to audiobooks. I read audiobooks.
So do you sell books online as well? Or I mean,
We do. So also plug for my website, arvidabookco.com. We partner with bookshop.org. It's actually a really incredible nonprofit. And they are about to launch a new e-reader, like an e-reader section of their sales where they profit share with independent bookstores. And again, bookshop.org is a nonprofit organization that's growing incredibly fast and they do great work. And, we're partnering with them. And we also partner with Libro.fm, which is, and both of these are Amazon alternatives. Libro.fm provides, it's like a monthly subscription and you get audiobooks, or you could just buy them individually, but most people do the subscription. And they've been really, really wonderful partners. And I would say in our store, like the majority of people that don't read paperback books, like do audiobooks or kind of do it reading and listening concurrently. And I feel like having all three of those options opens up reading for so many more people. It makes it so much more accessible because not everybody has isn't able to like sit down and read a book, whether it's because of if they're dyslexic or like have other issues with reading, like physical books. Audiobooks are such a great alternative, and so that's probably the fastest growing like paper book alternative right now. But we do, fortunately, like I said, we partner with an audiobook service. So
you're not fully analog. You're a bit analog plus, let's say.
Analog plus, I like that. I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it sounds like you've opened your mind to the opportunity of, what you could do with some of the digital stuff like ChatGPT or social media AI type tools. And I think you mentioned you were using, was it Jasper or something else? You've tried out some of these tools for social media. And
there's
I
so
noticed
many tools out there. Yeah.
I was looking at your Instagram channel. If you want to plug what that is, it's
Arvida Book Co. At Arvida Book Co. on TikTok, YouTube, all the platforms. We're everywhere.
I've seen some little videos with your kids in there, and the book fair, and so it's great community feel. And you get a sense of what's happening. I would say people should definitely check it out. And that was very cool to see some of that at the video. I think you mentioned something a little while back ago about the importance of the partnerships, and you called out a few specifically. And I think, people are finding, I guess, for entrepreneurs or people that are running businesses, that the network is so important, because those are the people, your network is your net worth, right? It's the people that are going to help you in the times that you need some specific skill or some specific connection. Even, I know you're living in an area, California sometimes can be seen as quite divisive. I know you've had people that are in there from different places on the political spectrum, but they find things in common. So can you tell me a little bit about that and why you think that what you're doing is kind of important to kind of bring people together?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of it comes back to like what we were talking about just now about being a third space, a third space that's centered around books. And books are truthfully like the greatest way to build empathy. I believe that exists. Like there's nothing more outside of yourself than reading a book that's another human has written. With you're reading their thought process, reading their journey, reading how whatever it is they're trying to express. You are walking in the shoes that they are putting on your feet, and in doing so, there's no way to avoid it. It puts you outside of yourself. And to have a space that, yes, is like a retail space, but also is not a retail space at all. Like it's very non-traditional. You could be, when you're, I don't even know. I hate to keep using the
labels, whatever.
Yeah. Like if you're shopping for shoes, if you're picking shampoo in the aisle, like it's very uncommon for somebody to come up to you and have like a real true conversation about, oh, is this shampoo the best shampoo, and their experience with the shampoo and how much they loved and how it made them cry and how it changed the kind of parent that they are.
Please take the shampoo home and read it,
Oh God, okay, don't talk to me. Like that's it's Target, settle down, ma'am. Like, in a bookstore, if you're holding a book that has had that impact on somebody, it's incredibly common for somebody to be like, oh my God, I love that book. I love this author. And you have this really like a very human connection. And having a space that supports and encourages those conversations. I mean, we host 28 different book clubs. We started with one, and then it kind of grew. There's so many different genres. There's so many different times of day, and we have like all these book clubs that meet here and offsite. Now.
Any like online book club meetings at all, where people virtually get together and do things?
No, but we did during the pandemic, and now we've kind of moved all in person. We might be launching some stuff in the future, so stay tuned. But we even have a book club that meets at a local movie theater once a month, and we read a book that was adapted into a film, watch the film, and then discuss it afterwards. And that's kind of a brilliant book club. It's a page to screen series in partnership with the Frida, which is like a local art house cinema, and that one has grown, and we've screened there for years now, and it's been so much fun to be a part of that and to kind of see that blossom into something with its own following. At the meeting last week, there was people that drove like hours to come in from San Diego, which is really far and it's like a weeknight. It was on a Wednesday, to come in for that. And it's really beautiful, inspiring. And it kind of is like what I was talking about earlier, where you have a plan for something and then it evolves and like it affects so much more. We've had like actually we have a wedding coming in the store. Somebody wanted to get married that they met in the bookstore. It's a whole thing. Like
Wow. Yeah.
it has taken on a whole kind of existence of its own. But like the partnership with the Frida, for example, is a great partnership that like I'm super proud to be affiliated with them. I love what they do. They're a nonprofit as well. Um, and there's just so many different things that have come out of this space that I'm really just proud of. And then at the base of it is people buying books. People buy books to like keep us here. And we're doing actually this week, starting on Wednesday, we have a first of a series of book fairs. So we're not taking over, but we're moving into the book fair sphere. So I don't know if you remember those when you were in elementary school, where they turn your gymnasium into a
Oh,
bookstore,
yes.
and
That's right.
so we're starting to do that this year. And then we're partnering with like the Irvine the Barclay Theater, which brings in all these incredible authors, and chefs. Like Ottolenghi is coming in the fall. We're going to be selling his cookbooks for him before and after his show, and Amy Tan and Fran Lebowitz and David Sedaris. Like we have all these incredible authors that we get to be there for their performances, and manage their signing lines afterwards.
So
And we've done,
lots of growth opportunities. Sounds like. So, I
yeah,
mean,
and
sorry, are you going to
yeah,
be like, what's the plan for this business? You started it, obviously during a challenging time. You're shifting careers, and you wanted to go into something that was kind of like the passion. You mentioned the discipline was probably what keeps you going. But then, if you look at the business itself, is this meant to be a lifestyle business, or is this something you're looking to scale to reach as many people like as possible, with the mission of kind of introducing them to new things and connection and books? Like where do you see this going? Because I don't, if once you hit your 5-year mark, are you going to be scaling up this business to say, oh, I want to stick one of these everywhere and become the next huge
to the
kind
moon.
of,
Do you go to the
yeah,
moon?
yeah, are you going to rocket to the moon, or are you saying like, hey, I'm more of a lifestyle, this is like what I love to do? And where do you find yourself? Because I think lots of entrepreneurs will start, or people that are running businesses will say, my dad, he ran a business for, I don't know how many years, 20 years, something it was. I don't even remember. And, worked 2 jobs for 15 years, really hard work, but it was always a struggle, right? It was just a continual struggle all the time. So for him, it was about, for me, putting me and my sister to get the education we needed, right? That was kind of his sacrifice.
Yeah,
So for you, are you like, give me a sense of what is the purpose of this business?
yeah. I mean, I feel like it was kind of I was raised to be of service. I feel like a meaningful life comes from that feeling of serving others, of doing the right thing, about making, like, molding your community to be the place that you want it to be, a place where people can lean on each other and support each other. I feel like that's what we've done for the last 4 years, and I feel like that's what I hope to do as long as I can. Is it ever going to be a place that I can go like buy a vacation home and go live on an island somewhere? I'm gonna say no, but also that's not really what I want to do either. I I feel like we could say it's more of a like a lifestyle business. I don't think that I'm not a person that is um looking to get rich. I don't think anybody goes into the bookstore business thinking that they're going to get rich. I mean, when Bezos started Amazon, he wasn't looking to get into the bookstore business. That was where he started, but it was um, more about creating the system using um, an object that had identifying information in its barcode, and no other object has that besides books. So it really wasn't out of a love for books. It was just convenience. But I feel like for me, like how I see the future of Arvida, of how I see my role in this community is just doing more of what I'm doing now, maybe being able to bring in more staff. I would like to be able to do more offsite events like within our community. We're in the middle of building a bookmobile right now and launching that hopefully before the end of the year. But all of that is to say, like, I don't think I would want another location. I'd love to be like in the airport because that's like such a special place to me, and I've always just thought that would be great. It's just kind of like my two worlds kind of colliding. But I don't really have any aspirations of franchising out or selling off my business. This
You're a bit
is
of the you and Mike are a bit of the soul of the business, I would assume. And it'd be hard to kind of replicate that. Maybe it would take
yeah,
a lot of work. I mean, being a leader of a business of the size you're at now, 5 years in almost, versus being a leader that's somebody who's managing hundreds of people. You
yeah.
have to kind of you know allow other people to take on some of the responsibilities that maybe you want to be more hands-on with. So what's your thoughts on that? Are you going to
Yeah.
kind of stick in the
I
same role you're doing now that you started off with? Is it pretty much the same role you're doing now, or do you see that
know
shifting?
the role that I'm in now is different from the role that I started in. It's a very different place than we're in a different place than we were 4 years ago, for sure. Uh, I feel like I think you're right. We are the soul of the, and we've had offers. Like I've had people offer that want us to open up second locations, like out of state in different parts of California, and I feel like I would be doing a disservice to that community. I feel like for the and my answer to those requests is always that I will help work with whoever lives in that community to kind of make it more organic, because I don't think um I feel like it would be kind of disingenuous. This is such a community based space, and I don't think you can duplicate that without having people from the community running it and making those, calling those shots. I
That's a
feel
really
like
good point. Yeah, it'd be hard to duplicate yourself and move you to, say, Australia and say, stick you here, and all of a sudden you are connecting with the community. That takes years to do
it
the
takes,
connection.
and I mean it. I love the place that we are so much, and I feel like this is enough for me and for my family. Like we can, this is what we need. But if somebody from Australia were to approach me and be like, "How can we replicate this?" I will jump on a Zoom call, and I've jumped on Zoom calls with prospective bookstore owners from around the world. Like I've had so many calls with people that just want to like pick brain and like talk about like how to build something that's similar to what we do, and I will always make time for those phone calls because I feel like, just supporting other people, supporting other women that want to, do the crazy thing and start, chase the dream. Like, you have to have those conversations and support each other. I think a rising tide rises all ships. So let's go. Let's make each other better and support each other. I, I, it's a hard thing to do. And it's, as an entrepreneur, like it's you give your whole life to whatever your project is. It's not
So it's not
something.
it's not 9 to 5 for you.
It's it's like, God, I can't even imagine. Like, yeah, no, and I would think that any entrepreneur would think the same. Like whether you're out there trying to build $1 billion business or just build a little bookstore that has some impact in your small town. That's that's where the passion comes from. Like you sleep about it. You wake up in the middle of the night thinking about, different ways of thinking of things. Like that's just, if you have an entrepreneur's brain, if you have an entrepreneur's heart, like that's just your life, and I mean,
I
I
would
was raised
almost say,
with them, like like for
yeah,
all this. Like,
I was going to say it's almost like constant discontentment in something. I don't know what it is that drives. drives people to continue to
Yeah.
think about, okay, I'm not happy with the status quo. I'm looking forward. You're looking, what's the next thing? What's the future?
Yeah.
How do I steer this machine? How do I, improve yesterday's status?
Yeah. I mean, and conversely, I kind of view it as not seeing problems, but seeing opportunities, and how, you can step in and do better, make it better, Um,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a tall order and it's exhausting, but I think that everybody that chooses these, is will be the person that chooses this path is will understand that.
All right. Well, we're getting close to wrap up here, so just want to maybe give you a chance to leave any final thoughts to the audience. What would be the big takeaway, I guess, from this? What did you think about this episode? Did you think it was a good experience, or?
I think it's a great experience. I mean, it's fun chatting with you, Sean. I'm hoping that there was some insight that somebody can draw out of my rambling, but hopefully the importance of shopping small, supporting your independent bookstore, but also just small businesses in general, keeping your dollars like in the community that you live in, and kind of shopping with your heart, you know, like making sure you're
It's like
being really
conscious
conscious of how you're.
conscious consumption, I suppose, would be the message.
Yeah, and supporting
Mm.
supporting the what you believe in.
Well, thank you so much. On that note, I'll say make sure you check out Arvida. Right? I'm saying that right? Arvida.
Yes. You know what's
Yes.
funny is I'm going to interrupt you because I have to tell
Or
you.
Arvida. Or Arvida.
Okay, so but it's kind of funny because the bookstore is named after the street that my parents grew up on in British Guyana in South America, and it was Arvida Road. But living in Southern California, everybody puts like a Spanish accent on it and calls it Arvida, which I just think is so funny and so beautiful because it's like an evolution of the word. It went from the name of the street my grandpa's shop was on in Mackenzie to like our life, which is what it is. Our Vida, like it's that's what it's become. So
So
it's either
Arvida, Arvida, whatever it
yeah,
is,
whatever.
it's a place of connection, a place of community. I thank you, Sam, and I wanted to encourage anybody who's out in California to visit Sam's store in Tustin, California, and also online at Instagram. What's your handle again?
At arvidabookco.com.
And website. You said there's a way to go shopping for books online. So
Yeah,
you
www.arvidabookco.com.
awesome. All right. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate it and enjoyed talking with you today.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.